I'm Rachel, and this is my 2024 edition of the Try a Story Tag John Updike edition. You might be able to see I'm in a weird new location. I am at the beach, in fact, as I said in my last couple of videos. We're at my friend's beach house right now, and I'm just trying out ways to, make booksy shots in this room. And this is what's working right now. We'll see if something else comes up in the future, but I hope you at least like the aesthetics behind me. So yeah, I'm also hoping to get some beach shots in this video as well for some fun in that way. And it seems apropos because I think this is going to be my final Updike video. I have been reading 7 stories from this huge hulking collection for a few years now, and now I'm at the final 7, and so I guess I'm hopefully going out with a bang and some fun with beachy stuff. And I hope you enjoy. And without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and start by giving my thoughts on the first of these 7 short stories, which is I Want to Live by Thom Jones. It is a long story about a grandmother's battle with cancer. And, we go into the nitty gritty of just how painful and grueling it can be when, you go to the clinic and you're on all of these treatments to like desperately try to get your body to behave. And oftentimes it doesn't work. And we go into her relationships with her family members and her, strong desire to want to live. She talks about seeing her husband die from cancer, and now she's trying to get in with her daughter and son-in-law and grandchild and the different relations she has with them. And it just like takes her through this whole sad, traumatizing experience, except that overall there's sort of a snarky affectation to the character. It's very exposition heavy too, but I feel like that it gives the narrative a bit of oomph, the snarkiness of it as she goes through this harrowing ordeal that a lot of people end up can go through as well, and it was very arresting in that way. The Gloaming by Elliot Dark is somewhat similar. We're starting with another death in the family, except this time our protagonist, well, first of all, people have names in this one, and our protagonist is Janet, who is the mother of a dying man in his 30s named Laird. And the gloaming is brought up pretty close to the beginning about the time of day, which turns into a metaphor, I guess, about this protracted end of life that Laird is going through. And so we, get some insight into their Scottish heritage, and there is some beautiful description of landscapes, but mostly it's dialogue between these two characters of Laird, who uncharacteristically, I think, for, being at the end of his life, is starting to open up more again to his mother. And it also contrasts to, I guess, the rest of his family. His father, Martin, can't deal with the death and isn't around, and his sister Anne lives somewhere else and comes to visit, but isn't, like, involved in the day-to-day. So really it is Laird and his mother, and some days Laird is, like, sullen and unresponsive, but other days he's asking her all sorts of questions about her life, and she's trying to get insight into his life. And so it's a different sort of look at, how to confront the end. And, like, we're seeing it from the perspective of a bereaved parent, or a soon-to-be bereaved parent, who, of course, when he does die, Martin does come back into the picture and, wants to know everything, because this is when he can handle it. So definitely also very sad, but I feel like here the strength is in, some of the physical descriptions, and also just in the dialogue and how it brings the relationships to life.
She started walking around with the.
finally moving away from death in these stories, but things are still kind of hard in Proper Library by Carolyn Ferrell, where we are following 14-year-old Lori, who is a Black American living in the projects in the Bronx. And this is a story that can be a bit overwhelming. I think it's supposed to give a sort of ambiance with all of the characters coming in and out of it and showing how rough the world is. A lot of the interactions, especially between men and women, are kind of tinged with violence. There's a lot of underage sex and some babies. There's people struggling with AIDS and with, going to school when you have children and these sorts of troubles. And then Lori is in a relationship with a young man named Rakim, who he leaves school for a long time. Perhaps in large part because people are realizing he's in a relationship with another boy and, are responding with homophobia. So there are some things that were a little, I guess, confusing with the, back and forths of it. I could kind of have trouble keeping up with the timeline sometimes about what was happening when. But certainly there was just sort of a rush of reality of what it would be like for this young man. And also, there's also his mother desperately trying to get him to, get into a better academic future, which seems like it could be a possibility for him. I mean, he's always tutoring people in math, and his mother's giving him vocabulary lessons. But the reality of the world is just so tough for him, and he ends up skipping school for long periods of a time just to be with Rakim. Although it seems like maybe he'll go back to it by the end, but it's not, a polished, happy ending because the world he is in is still very rough. But there are also, in his relationships we see, coming in and out of the story, there are some, bits of grace and happiness amidst all the rest of it. Birthmates by Gish starts out in a hotel room in preparation for a conference. Well, Art is a man who has gone to what he calls a welfare hotel, going for a cheaper price, and then things kind of go from there. We kind of are, trundling along the main timeline where he is freaked out by a headset in the room. It really sounds like he has a bit of snobbery about him, maybe because he's coming for a microcomputer conference in the late 90s. And he ends up taking part of the headset with him because he figured he might need it to take calls or something. And he comes downstairs and he sees it's a primarily black clientele, and he's, judging based on that about class issues. And then there are some young boys who sort of make him a part of their game where they're, racing around him and trying to touch him and everything. And then they ultimately yank his headset and, are, saying racial epithets sort of to him and bonk him over the head even. And he goes out cold. And then he wakes up in this nurse Cindy's room, and you can tell she and her family are living in the hotel, and she's tending to his wound and says something along the lines of, well, this is where we are while you folk always rise up. And it's interesting racial commentary there because as a Chinese man he is being subjected to racism, but also he's seen as of a better situation, and both are kind of true, which being Jewish is also something I identify with. And so and even as we go along the present narration of this, we have these flashbacks to his wife who ultimately left him in part, I think, she was a superstitious person is how he first started talking about her, but also then she lost a baby in utero and they were, desperately trying to get pregnant and, going through a big rigmarole for that anyway. And, he didn't really emotionally connect to her grief over that. And then, we do jump to the actual conference and he has this sort of rival at another company who's always on his mind, and he does end up networking with someone, and it's awkward because, he's not staying in the actual hotel of the conference, and then he gives his number at the welfare hotel, as he calls it, and then realizes when he gets back that he no longer has the headset. So, there's a lot going on in this, and I feel like some of it's a little rushed or the pacing, but, it's interesting to sort of get a sense of like this man's personality and sort of the varieties of life that he has to deal with. Soon by Pam Durban is sort of a sprawling multi-generational saga about how children kind of turn into their parents. It's also a bit confusing, especially in the beginning, about who's speaking. Like, we're introduced to Martha and her mother Elizabeth at the same time, and I don't know, the timelininess of this is a little bit confusing, but it's intriguing in its way. It's about a Southern family sprawling through the 20th century. It's about things that happened to the mother Elizabeth as a child and in her marriage that, embittered her, and how her daughter promised not to be that bitter, but how she later in life, fell into a lot of the same habits as her mother as well. And then she has this big grand family reunion at the end of her life, or nearish to the end of her life, and then we jump 25 years after that, where her grand niece is going up to the house where her great aunt Martha had the family reunion, and it's just filled with lots of details about this Southern life and about sort of the realities of the life going to seed. I guess in many generations, in fact, because at one point one of their older houses with a big plantation past was razed, and then Martha's great niece was going into this falling apart house where she has these vivid memories of the family reunion. And then there's also just stuff in here that I think it's difficult to put to words about sort of the meaning of life and how to, make the best of it, that gets into philosophical points, which actually I thought were quite moving, but it's sort of hard to, contextualize within even a longer short story. But yeah, I thought that it was intriguing.
I don't know if I have a lot of friends left. I do.
Prices have gone up. Inflation.
They just live in all kinds of different
Supplies
places.
and Yep.
You know, you only live once.
I think you don't know true you.
I didn't connect with the half-skin steer by Annie Proulx as much as I might have liked to. Maybe I have vacation brain, and actually, as I'm filming this, I'm nearing the time when I have to start prepping to go home already, so there is that. There's also just some complications with this story, where we're following a man, Meru, who is on his way back to a family ranch doing a cross-country trip for his brother's funeral. But then there's a whole lot of flashbacks about him thinking about this man on their old ranch who half-skinned a steer, and how the steer ran away. And then when Meru is caught in a snowstorm, he might in fact be being stalked by this steer. But, with all the flashbacks back and forward, it's just really confusing to keep on top of what's happening. And we're getting a little bit of Meru's backstory and why he left the ranch. And we're getting to how the ranch has now been transformed into this sort of Australian down under experience. And there's no quotation marks, which I absolutely hate in this. I do feel like there are some beautiful turns of phrase, and the half steer is, supposed to be a little bit spooky and supernatural, so that maybe you really should be taking your time with this clunky story, which I might have not given it all my due in that way. But yeah, it's definitely Proulx talking about Midwestern ranching life in a, unique new way. I think one thing I really did like about this, other than the colorful language that I think I should, sit with a little more is like the idea of Meru as an old man who's going to his brother's funeral cross country in his Cadillac, and there are, car crashes and a snowstorm. So definitely there's a feel of, his own end of life coming and a lot of atmosphere with that. But other than that, there's just so many colorful characters and they're just jam-packed in competing timelines, and it can be a little hard to connect to. Hello, I am back from vacation, and not only wrapping up my vacation, but wrapping up the entirety of reading this book over the last several years with the final story, which is The Best Girlfriend You Never Had by Pam Houston. And this is a story very much about trauma and desire for connection. It starts with the two main characters, Lucy and Leo, and they live in the San Francisco area. They go over the Bay Bridge and they sort of fantasize about the weddings they see happening at a certain venue. And Lucy's really the main character, and there's such a sort of seesaw effect. Like, she loves living in this big city. I think it like makes her feel alive, but there's also like lots of allusions to muggings and so forth. But then again, she also had a traumatic childhood where her parents were physically and emotionally abusive to her, and this led her into having bad relationships. And we go into the past and skim over a few of them, and then the most recent one is with this man Gordon. And truly, she's kind of in love with Leo, but Leo is kind of in love with someone else, and he has his own sort of baggage as well. But the most promising or hopeful thing about this is like sort of embracing this fantasy that the two of them share when they leave together, because otherwise there's just a lot in this story that is about the trauma of bad relationships, but yet there's a strange sense of hope that things could get better in the story as well. And I hope I gave it enough attention that it was due. Obviously, it's been a busy couple days for me as well, doing other things as well, but what a big project to finally be finishing here. I'm very excited that this whole endeavor finally paid off, and I will be linking to my short stories playlist down below with all of my other reviews of the other stories in this big tome. And that about covers it for me now. It's definitely later into the month than I would have hoped, and I still have some July booktube I'll squeeze into August if I have to. And I think you'll see me next on this channel for my Would You Read It challenge video, where I look back at booktube prize ballots of yesteryear and read the first few paragraphs and discuss if I'd like to go forward, which is always really fun. Actually, when it comes to the BookTube Prize, I'm currently on my sabbatical for the 2024 year, but that's about to end. The finals are about to begin, and I'm going to be judging for those, so exciting stuff is coming up for that as well. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed me taking you along for little snippets of a beach vacation with me, and I hope you have the opportunity to enjoy some of the season yourself. And thanks so much for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time.